Hello and welcome to an all new episode of The Spotlight. I am your host, Kente, all the way live from Los Angeles, California, and I'm so happy to be here today. Let me introduce my co-host, the one and only. We call him the Captain, Captain Olaf Barbosa. How you doing?
I am doing great. Just excited to be here tonight and to take part in this wonderful show tonight that we're going to have. So I can't wait to get into it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. You know, this one we were supposed to have last week, but we didn't do the show last week. But you know what? It worked out that we were able to reschedule everything and do it this week. And I know that some of the people, they're excited about the round 3 of the Comic Book Madness, and we're going to do that in our second half of the show.
I'll take the blame for not for last week not happening because I had to go. I wasn't able to be here last week, so I'll take the blame. It was my fault.
Hey, it's okay. It's okay. And also joining us is the one and only Arpo. How you doing, Arpo?
I am doing just great. It's nice to be back on the air again. Wee-hee.
Yeah, I love that. Wee-hee. Hilarious. You are funny. All right. So we have a wonderful guest tonight. She's an author, the one and only KL Randis. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Sorry for all the technical difficulties, but sometimes it beats that way on live radio. So, but I'm glad that you were here and you stuck it out with us.
No problem.
Yes. So one thing we love to do is we love to give the origin story of our guests. So, you know what? Let's start off with where are you from originally? Where were you born?
I was actually born in New York, Long Island to be specific.
Long Island, okay. Long Island. So how long did you spend there? Did you go to high school there?
I didn't. I moved to Pennsylvania near the Pocono Mountain area in 2000.
Okay. All right. So growing up, was being a writer something you always wanted to do, or is that something that came later?
I did. I always had journals from the time I was really young. I always wanted to enter into poetry contests in middle school and high school, and really was just always writing. So it was something that I really loved to do, and I really thought of it as a career until, obviously after I actually graduated college. So,
that's a good question. With social media and such, do you think that people still write journals? Because when I was coming up, you always had girls would write their journals and keep all their secrets in there. But it seems like now everybody keeps all their secrets online publicly. So do you think they still
I think so. I mean, I'm how old, and I still keep a journal. I think it kind of grounds you. For me, it's more therapeutic than it is really anything. So, and it's really nice to look back on things that you've done. Day to day, you kind of lose things. So it's nice to look back on things that you did years before and oh yeah, I remember doing that, or I remember when this happened.
We've done shows about this many times, and the idea that it just seems like we're going to a time where there won't be any actual physical books anymore, that everything's going to be digital, that, we're going to have to get our reading from, a screen. How does that make you feel?
It's interesting because I remember paperbacks, like everybody would always get the big, thick paperback books, and then everything moved over to ebooks. And then now we're kind of seeing a transition, at least within the author world, where people are downloading the books to listen to. So audiobooks are now becoming the new big thing. So it's kind of interesting to see how that progresses. So we go from having these huge pamphlet type books to, having these tiny minuscule screens that we read them on, to not reading at all. You just literally listen to somebody read it to you.
Now, this is coming from someone who loves audiobooks, but a part of me feels like I'm kind of cheating a little bit. By not actually reading it, some books sometimes, but just listening to it. But I mean, I guess it's good just to get the information any way you can get it. But so are you a big audiobook person yourself?
Yeah, I'm fairly big into it. It's just nice because you can multitask when you're doing it. So you can be listening to a book while you're driving, or while you're working out, or while you're cleaning the house. So I think that's what people like most about it, is that they can continue to kind of go about their daily business while reading, technically.
I was just recently, I took a cross country train trip, and it was so many people on the train. They were actually listening to audiobooks, or reading on their Kindles and such. And I think I think it's good to get people to read, because when I was coming up, I read a lot, but I don't know how I feel about not actually having that physical copy anymore, even though I'm totally gone over myself to the digital realm. I don't know how that makes me feel. I feel kind of like I'm cheating a little bit, when I
balance it all. Like, listen to a book one day, but then, I'm okay with reading on my Kindle, but then I kind of want to pick up a book sometimes and physically read it, especially if it's something that's, I feel, educational or education based, because you almost want to take notes or, notate pages to go back to. I feel it's easier. I mean, I know you can do that in the Kindle too, but I feel like there's almost like a physical, thing that you need to do with like notating a page or making a mark on it that just makes it like a little more special.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about kids? Do you think that parents should push kids more into actually reading the physical book before they get into it, or does it matter at this point?
I think that we're kind of in an interesting era where a lot of kids now are learning a lot on iPads and tablets, which I'm really just all for. If it's going to encourage a kid to read, to me, it doesn't necessarily matter as much. So if they learn the love of reading from a Kindle or, a tablet at first, and then that transitions into a love of reading when they're middle school or high school, then I think that's great. Either way, it's going to happen.
I remember I used to have this tutor when I was very young, and he was like one of those guys who was like crazy, but he could recite Shakespeare, but he was also like insane, but he was like really brilliant, but crazy at the same time. And he used to get on me about reading for fun, not just for school. Like, I was like in junior high or whatever. And I remember he tried to get me to read all these real heavy books. And then finally he just came to me where I was at, took me to the library, and I was into horror films. So I started out with Stephen King, and then I just started reading a lot of other books after reading a lot of Stephen King. When you were young, what were some of the authors you like to read?
Really anything I could get my hands on. So again, my pen name is KL Randis, but I go by Kelly. But when I actually penned my first debut novel, Spilled Milk, so I prosecuted my father for child abuse, which is why I wrote Spilled Milk. So when I was in high school, I actually found that there was a lack of literature on what a child goes through when they're in the judicial system. So because of my passion for reading and the lack of information that was out there about that particular, subject, I thought, who better to write about it than somebody who's not only been through it, but, has a love of reading, has a love of writing. It kind of all just like fell together in a way that you can't really expect, especially, I did go to college and, I have a degree in psychology. So, again, not really ever considering a writing career until, Spilled Milk came about, and, it kind of all just happened from there.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's get right into the book Spilled Milk. For those who may be considering, purchasing your book, give them a bird's eye view of what they're going to get from the experience of reading it, because I know some very heavy subject matter, and I haven't had a chance to read it as of yet, but it seems like it might be a tough read. So give us, some background on what made you write the book and what we can.
Sure. Yeah. So, again, I prosecuted my father for child abuse. So really, anytime you're talking about child abuse or sexual abuse, there's going to be kind of a heavy undertone to the subject matter. And then what I did find when I was in high school was that a lot of the books out there, while they were devastating, really just focused more or less on like the abuse that the child went through. So whether it was a memoir or a fictional novel, they kind of went with just talking about the abuse itself. And then educating kids in terms of talking about child abuse or telling on an abuser. We don't really tell kids what happens after they tell on their abuser, which I think is probably the most important part, because it kind of is setting them up for failure. We tell kids, tell us if somebody's hurting you, tell us if, something is happening, but we don't really tell kids what happens after they have to tell on their abuser and then face them ultimately in the courtroom. So what I did was I took my experience literally from A to Z. So from the time I was little and I first started experiencing the abuse all the way through high school, how, that affected my high school relationships, how it affected my adult relationships, ultimately testifying on my father, his sentencing. He was sentenced up to 16 years for his crimes. So I literally walked the reader from A to Z through the whole novel. And then I also show them what happens really to the family unit after a child testifies on, the abuser, which, can play a huge part in, how you heal from it and how you move on from it.
Wow. Now, I mean, it's one thing to participate in the prosecution of your father for child abuse, but to take those experiences and then put them in a book, was that process therapeutic for yourself?
It was. Initially, Spilled Milk was written as a therapeutic outlet for myself. And what was funny is, it was finished and my husband read it and he's like, listen, like you have to tell people this, like you have to let people read this, because what I tried not to do was, obviously anybody reading it, I wouldn't want to re-victimize them. I wouldn't want them to be re-traumatized. I especially thought that if a high school student was reading it, I wouldn't want them to be turned off by the subject matter so much that they wouldn't pick up the book. So I was very conscious of that when I was writing it. So where other books will kind of tend to harp on those particular abuse scenarios, I obviously let you know what's going on in the book, but I'm more or less talking about, the relationships I had and what was going on in the courtroom and what it was like to testify and what questions they asked. So you kind of get like the full story of what happens, when an abused child has to testify.
Let's talk about a little bit about dealing with the system when it comes to, going through that kind of a prosecution. Obviously I've never been through a situation such as yours, but I have some ideas of how the system is. It's a bureaucracy and not always does it seem like they're on your side. Did you have people, that work for the prosecution that you felt like were really in your corner, that really were your advocates? Or was it something where a lot of times you hear these stories where the victim has to really, really, really fight through to get justice?
Right. So that can be the case. Unfortunately, the way our legal system works is it's kind of skewed in the sense that it's only based on what they can prove in a court of law. So based on their laws, based on, what they can prosecute for, all those fun things. So I was fortunate in the sense that I not only had a really awesome support team behind me in terms of like the counselor I had been seeing, my boyfriend's mother at the time, a really good support unit. When you're a child that goes through this process, they have something called a victim's advocate that works at the courthouse. And their sole responsibility is for walking me through that process so that, it isn't as scary and they can explain everything. And, they kind of have your best interest in mind, which is nice because, they basically handle everything for you because you're not an adult. Sometimes you don't know what's going on. It is very scary. So it was nice to have that available to me.
Wow.
Now, with in where you're at, as far as the legal system, is there a certain age? I know here, in other words, if you're like 10 or like 11, a court won't really recognize a child until they're almost 12 years old. Did you run into that kind of a problem, or at the age you did this, or the age that this was going on, were you older than 12?
Right. So I was in high school at the time. It's my understanding that they try not to put a child on the witness stand if at all possible, just because it is hard to sit in front of somebody who's been harming you and, have to say the things they did to you or, whatever it is. So while they try not to do it, it really just depends on the child, if they're able to get up there to explain what happened. They do have some other processes that they can do to avoid court at all costs, if at all possible. But I was in high school at the time, so I was a little bit older, but did have to testify about things that had been happening to me since I was 5. So, it really just depends.
Go ahead.
Well, some of it, what it is here is they consider it, in other words, until they're 12, a child is not a reliable witness until they're like 12. but that's here in Indiana.
Right. In Pennsylvania, as far as I know, to my knowledge, I don't think that they have like an age stipulation on whether or not a victim would be considered reliable or not. I think it just depends on the amount of information that they're able to gather during the investigation.
Okay.
Now, being that you were part of the prosecution of your father, I can only imagine that this, what was the response from your family? Did you have people that supported you from your family? Were there people maybe who didn't want to believe it or whatnot? What was that like?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So initially, I basically had the support from my entire family, which was phenomenal. So immediately, everybody not only believed what I said, but which is kind of almost sad because people actually came up to me and they said, I can understand, like I could see that. I could see him doing that. Like that was just his personality. Like he had either said something about me at a family function, or the way he, treated us at home, that somebody saw something that he maybe like didn't realize that somebody saw. So there were kind of red flags way before I even said anything. So which was nice in that the sense that they, that they were 100% behind me, but at the same time, almost kind of a little sad for me to say, like, you saw something kind of like red flag wise, but you didn't think to ask questions, or you didn't think to, maybe say something or bring it up. So I know that it's a hard balance when you're faced with a family member or like a really good friend that's going through something like that. But at the same time, children, they're our biggest, asset to the future. And, we don't have voices when we're that little. So all the more reason for an adult to stick up for a child when they do see those red flags.
Wow. I can only imagine the toll, experience like that must have on you. So, just dealing with men in general, how did that affect your relationship with men, just as an adult now?
I didn't get the last part of your question.
No, how did the experience of prosecuting your father, as well as what you went through, how did that affect your relationship with men overall?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I was very fortunate in the sense that in high school, I eventually wound up, and he's here today, so I eventually wound up marrying my high school sweetheart. So during this whole process, I had, a very, very kind, very generous man, really, because he had been through some things with his family, not anything that I've been through, but just like divorce and, things that kind of had him grow up quicker than, most kids in high school have to grow up. So in a way, we kind of connected in that sense. So we kind of had things that made us more adults than, other kids in our class. And, we connected right away. And I was very fortunate to have him, by my side throughout all of that. And, while I was testifying and afterwards, I can say that it took me a really long time to marry him. He was very patient. So, I kind of had to keep having him prove himself, which he was more than willing to do, thankfully. So, we've been married for a long time and we've been together for a long time. So, he's still a good guy.
So that's the one thing about the story is it seems to have a happy ending. The fact that you were able to, marry your high school sweetheart and you guys have seemingly such a great relationship. But I know that there must be some residual effect though, from growing up that way. I imagine you must have gotten help, from a professional.
I did. And what I think contributed most to my success now and the way that I kind of am today is the fact that I did get help, not only from a very early age. So I started going to see a counselor while I was in high school, but I've continued that counseling and I found, my triggers. I found the best ways that I can cope with certain situations. And my life isn't perfect as a survivor. I'm always going to have kind of those residual thoughts about, certain situations, or, I have certain triggers, like I can't smell certain things, or I can't have certain, like oddly enough, like a certain brand of toothpaste I can't have in my house because it was a brand of toothpaste that he used. So just little things. But I think when you can, realize what those things are about yourself and your surroundings, it definitely helps you to cope better, which I, highly recommend everybody doing if they are, either a victim or a survivor of abuse.
Wow. Now, I want you to speak to, the young person who may be going through something similar to what you did. And they feel like maybe no one is there that can help them, or, what advice would you have to them?
So I do a lot of teen dating violence seminars and assemblies in like my local high schools and, surroundings and stuff. And what I've definitely found is one thing that the comment I think that I get the most from other high school students that age is they'll say to me, you don't seem like the kind of person that was abused. Like, you don't look like an abused child. You don't act like an abused child. And even when I go do seminars, like I was invited to the Pentagon last month for the second year in a row, and I've done trainings and seminars for the National Guard. Columbia University is coming up next month. Oh, wow. So I've got a lot going on where I'm really in front of these, kind of key people that are making changes and making policy changes. And I think probably the one statement and mission that I'm on right now is to change what people think an abused child looks or acts like, because I am the exact opposite. So I had, extracurricular activities that I was involved in. I did have a job where some people do funnel their, I guess, like their coping mechanisms into like negative outlets, which I did have siblings that channeled that way. So whether it's drugs or promiscuity or, whatever it is, there's that way you can go. And then there's also my way where I kind of took my focus and I focus on education because that's what I was interested in. I focused on journaling because that's what I was interested in. So I'm just kind of trying to change the, I guess, the mindset and the expectations of what an abused child looks or acts like.
Yeah, because I can, there's no one way that a victimizer looks. So the idea of that an abused person looks a certain way, that seems kind of crazy to me. But I'm glad that you spoke to that, because I guess that mindset is out there, that some people think that an abused person looks a certain way, or you never know. You never know what someone's going through. Because people.
Sure. Yeah, you never do. Actually, that's one thing that a lot of people said to me, is because I was in high school at the time all this was going on, when the court proceedings were happening. And when students found out, because I live in a very small town, so, it was something that got out very easily. It was in the newspapers. And, they said to me, like, they would come up to me in the hallways and be like, I had no idea. Like, you could have, like, you just threw a wild card at me, because I never would have guessed that you were going through something like this in your personal life. And what I think was more interesting when that happened was that I had, believe it or not, more male students coming up to me to tell me that something similar had happened to them than I even did female students. So what I found was that when I told and people found out about what was going on with me, they kind of used me as like an outlet, really, to say, hey, like, this is kind of going on in my life. Like, I haven't really told anybody. I don't really want to tell anybody. Or, what do I do? Where do I go for help? How do I change this? And, not a lot of people know that in their towns, most counties have a free crisis center that is specifically for sexual abuse or just domestic violence. And, you don't need insurance. You don't need to pay for it. It's run by the state. So you can go and get services like legal advocacy and counseling, and they have shelters, and you can go get all these services for free. You don't even need to pay for it.
Now, there was something you said that was quite interesting, that when you told your family what you were going through, that there were members of your family that said that they weren't surprised or shocked. So, what would you say to people who may suspect something going on? Like, what would you say to them as far as what they should do?
I think the most important thing to just take away from my story, my experience, was that it literally took one person to keep, not I don't want to say keep after me, but to kind of open that conversation for me to feel safe and comfortable enough to come forward. So had I not had that one person in my life, I don't know where my life would be right now. So, he could still be around. He could still be abusing other people, which we did find there were other victims, and there always is. It's never just one victim. It's always several victims. It's just how many did they get caught for? So, it's just one of those scenarios where you can literally be the one person that a child needs you to be, and you could ultimately change the entire course of their life for the better if you were to just say something. And there are anonymous ways of reporting child abuse or suspicions, and then it's out of your hands. You don't have to do anything personally. The state takes care of it, and they go in and they investigate. So that's also an option. Wow.
Like I said, this is a amazing story, and thank you so much for sharing it with us and having the courage to do so, because, there's so many people that in this world, they suffer in silence. And the fact that you were able to, not only have the courage to look your victimizer in his face, and then the fact that you went out and you wrote about it and that you're helping a lot of people, that's amazing. Have you had any contact with your father since he went to prison?
Right. I actually get that question a lot. People are really curious about that. I have not. So literally the very last time that I saw him is when he was standing in the courtroom. It was at his sentencing, and, they sentenced him up to 16 years in prison, and they put the handcuffs on him immediately and walked him out of the room. And that was the last I saw him.
Oh, wow. Wow. Do you want to know anything about what's going on with him, or is that just, a chapter of your life that's moved on?
Yeah, I mean, not particularly. People, one of the prosecutors actually during the proceedings had asked me when I was up on the stand, what would you like to see, happen to him? I don't know if she was trying to get me to be malicious about it in my response, but, ultimately what I said was that, I just wanted him to not be able to hurt anybody else. I just wanted him to not be able to hurt me, hurt anybody else. So I didn't really care what that wound up looking like. I just wanted him away where he couldn't hurt other people. And I think that really resonated not only with the jury, but with the judge. When she, at the end of a court hearing, when somebody is sentenced or when they're found guilty, you're asked to write letters. So you and anybody who supports you in your cause is asked to write a letter to the judge saying why or why not you think that person should go to jail for the maximum amount of time. And we did write letters. And I remember the judge saying while she was reading my letter that she found it amazing that in the one instance, and the reason why the book is called Spilled Milk was because I was obviously very sheltered in a sense growing up through this, because this was my normal. This was my everyday routine. It wasn't odd to me. This was just how we lived our lives. And when I came into high school and I started having, numerous outside friendships and boyfriends and going to other people's houses, and I realized that this was not the way everybody's house is. I was sitting at my boyfriend's dinner table and his little brother spilled a glass of milk, and I immediately jumped up. I went into fight or flight mode to try to remove him from the room because I thought he was going to get abused by his father. And everybody just kind of stopped and they were staring at me and they said, listen, honey, it's fine. We'll clean it up. It's okay. We'll clean up this milk and we'll get him another glass. Not a big deal. But my adrenaline was pumping, and literally in that moment that I realized something is not right in my house. And that's literally that week I started going counseling. I found a place that was close to my house that offered the free counseling. And I was I really need to figure out what's what here. And, that's kind of how all that came about.
Wow. So, being a part of a prosecution, it's like being a part of a war, right? And once it's over, either side goes on and wins or whatever. Then it's what happens after that? What's the next chapter? How do you recover? I know part of this book was part of your recovery, but how else do you pick up the pieces? Because then now you got to live the rest of your life. Now I know you have, you married your high school sweetheart. That's a part of it, and all of that, and writing this book and going out and speaking. But what are some other ways that you just move on and continue and to enjoy your life? Because you're a young woman, you have your whole life ahead of you.
Right. So really small spoiler, I actually had to go through the process of prosecuting him 2 times. Reason being is the very first time we walked through steps A to Z, there was actually something called a hung jury. And if you're not familiar with that term, that basically means that the jury was not able to come to a decision whether or not he was guilty, because some people were saying yes, some people were saying no. In my county, this had never happened before at the courthouse that I was at. We got done with the hung jury. I was a mess. I was hysterically crying. I walked back to the DA's office, and the secretary comes in and she says, there's people outside. The jury is outside and they want to speak to Kelly. And the DA was like, what do you mean? And they're like, they're all 12 of them. They're all outside. They want to speak to Kelly. So I go outside, and it was quite literally just this big mass group of people that ran up to me, hugged me, and they were crying, and they were like, we thought you were so brave. We thought you were so awesome. We wanted you to know we believed you. There was literally one person on the jury, and it wasn't even anything about doubt. It was more or less like he had a question, but as a jury, they obviously can't just raise their hand and be like, can you clarify something really quick for me? So because he had that like inkling of a doubt, he said, like, you know, I'm so sorry. I couldn't say that he was 100% guilty because I had this question. So the jury met with the DA's office the next week to say, make sure you say this specifically, clarify this, make sure you say this, so that the next time we went in to prosecute, it would be a slam dunk. There would be no questions asked. This is what happened, and you know, everything would be clarified. And that's what they did. In terms of the healing process of that, you know, it's always going to be a journey. For me, I think the hardest part was that I had so many siblings that I, you know, more or less did this for them. I wanted them, because I'm one of the older siblings. I have one older sibling, and then everybody else is younger than me. So I was more like the mother hen of my family, the protector. They looked up to me more of like a mother figure than they did a sister. So I think the hardest part for me was, you know, I did go to counseling. I did get the help that I thought I needed to kind of move forward with my life. And some of them did not. And for me, that was probably the most heartbreaking part, was that, you know, that textbook example of what an abused child looks like, that's what some of them became. And that was really hard for me to watch, because I felt like I sacrificed so much to make sure that they would have, you know, a better life at the other end of this. And sometimes that's not always the case.
I was wondering if I could just pop in here for just a moment.
Wow, that's
first of all, I want to say I love the cover. Now, is that you, or is that just a picture that the publisher came up with, or on the yes?
No, this is actually a picture of me, so I don't know if you can see the
resemblance
or not. This is me.
The look on your face is just haunting. But as I said, I haven't had a chance to read much of the book yet. But what I have read, it seems like there was some kind of hero worship between you and your father at first, or at least between the character of Brooke and her father. And, you know, do you think that kind of helped lead into...
So, like, in the first chapter. I think, I think like as a reader myself, because I read so much, and then also as a writer, I really wanted the readers to know that, you know, obviously every little girl wants to look up to her father as the hero. They want him to be, you know, the greatest guy, and, you know, he's always going to be there for you. So I did kind of set up the book initially to, you know, show that, you know, this is how every little girl is supposed to think of her father. This is how every little girl should be looking up to her father. And then at the very, very end of that first chapter, you know, there's a little bit foreshadowing at that last sentence that says, you know, it would be the first of many secrets that I would eventually keep from my father. So that kind of leads you in, you know, into the rest of the story. But, you know, I definitely think that, you know, I never had that father. I never had that, you know, that kind of role model in my life. So, you know, very fortunate in many ways that I did find, you know, a very loving husband. And I do have a lot of other male role models in my life that weren't him. But I know that's not always the case. So, you know, that can be hard for people.
Wow. Well, once again, the name of the book is Spilled Milk. And how can people get their copy of it?
Easiest way is probably just to go to klrandis.com. It's on Amazon, so you can get the paperback or the ebook on Amazon. That's probably the most popular way to get it. So, but I also have a lot of people contact me on all my social media. Like I was saying before, like I'll have people message me just to tell me their story. They don't necessarily want to do anything about it, but they're older. They've got kids. They're, you know, 40, 50 years old. It's just something that they've never said to anybody before. So they'll read my story and they'll be like, listen, like I know I'm not going to do anything about this, but I just wanted you to know that you've inspired me to kind of maybe get the help I need or to move on with my life. Or, you know, I had no idea that the courtroom was like this, or thank you for giving me insight to this. So that has been probably the most rewarding part about all this.
Wow. And how can people get you in social media?
I'm on Twitter, so I'm at KL Randis, and then I also have a Spilled Milk fan page. You can just look up Spilled Milk, and then I'm also on, you know, Spilled Milk, or on Facebook, just KL Randis is my name on there. And
we're getting, let's see. Oh yeah, you spoke at the Pentagon. Yeah, second year in a row. Well, you know, before we say goodbye, what was that like going to the Pentagon? You know, I think it's exciting. It would be exciting and a little scary too at the same time because you know it's the Pentagon.
Yeah. Yeah, no, gosh, it was like terrifying. So the first year that I went, a military personnel actually read my book. And while they were having the discussion, because April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month nationally. So while they were having the discussion of, you know, which military person are we going to have to run our seminar this year? Who are we going to have speak? Somebody raised their hand and was like, listen, like, I just read this awesome book. Why don't we reach out to the author to see if we can get her to come on base to do the speaking event? And it was actually the first time they've ever done it, because typically they would have a military person that's, you know, obviously working at the Pentagon run this particular thing. And it was I was the first civilian to come on base to speak at their April event, which was fantastic. And they actually invited me back again this year, which was awesome, to have any residual questions answered. A lot of people remember me from last year and they're like, oh, thank you so much for coming back out. And I think what's interesting about the culture of being at the Pentagon was I had so many people come up to me that were, and I don't even want to try to say who they are, but just like higher ranking sergeants or whatever they're, you know, whatever their terminology is there, where you could tell that there was something they wanted to say, but they didn't. They would shake. There was one moment in particular that stands out. You know, she came up to me, she read the back of my book, she heard me speak, she shook my hand, and she's crying. She's just like tears pouring down her face, didn't say a word to me, just shook my hand, tears pouring down her face, said thank you, and then just walked away. Wow. So even just the culture on base is different because, you know, there's like a certain, you know, I'm sure, which is why a lot of men don't come forward, because there's that stigma that if you're, you know, in the military, that, you know, you're not strong enough if you didn't fight off your offender. And if you're a guy, you're not strong enough if you didn't fight off your offender. But, you know, it does happen, and it's way more common than people
also,
want to think or believe.
Wow.
Before Kinte
thank you so much
cuts the psychological tether, could you talk a little bit about your Pillbillies series? Because I looked at the description of the first book, and it's like, wow, this is going to be next on my list after I finish Spilled.
Right. So obviously Spilled Milk was very heavy for me to write. It took me a really long time to write it because of the subject matter. So for my second book, my second and third books, I wanted them to be more of a fictionalized breather on what I was writing about. And on the East Coast anyway, in the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania areas, we have this massive epidemic of heroin and pill users. And you know, I personally know several high school students that have died from this. And, you know, I have a family member very close to me who is currently incarcerated because he just could not kick it. And, you know, so many people that I know have gone in and out of rehab, and it's this massive epidemic. So I wrote a fictionalized story based on police interviews that I did, addicts in our area that are either recovered or still using, just like kind of the underbelly stories of what goes on in this area, what they're doing, how they hide it, you know, where they go to get it. And it kind of just spun off from there. So Pillbillies is the name of that book. And then Laced is the second book of that series.
Wow. Definitely heavy stuff that we're dealing with. And, you know, when you are, you know, look back at, you know, Spilled Milk and everything that, you know, all the people you spoke with and all of the lives that you've touched, is there a moment where you know, that got to you more than others, where, you know, maybe someone you've met along the way that you shared your story with? Is there a moment that you can, you know, that really, you know, encapsulate, you know, the whole experience?
Yeah, I can actually think of two. One was during an assembly that I did at a local high school. There was probably about 500 students in attendance because they invited all of the high school classes to come to this assembly. And it was about teen dating violence. And I also touched on the subjects of child abuse and domestic violence, and how like the habits that they're having in their teenage relationships will ultimately follow them into their adult relationships. And you kind of wanted to have those red flags notified of what was going on. And when I started talking about child abuse and just signs of child abuse and, you know, kind of my backstory, there was one girl who got up during the middle of when I was talking, and she, you know, ran to the back of the room. She was like hysterically crying. I met with her after the assembly. She asked to speak with me, and I was her one person literally within that assembly. So just by going to talk to students about it, I became her one person. What I like to tell people is, like, you need to be, you know, be the glass of spilled milk for one person. So I was her glass of spilled milk. So I opened her eyes. I was her aha moment. And, you know, she was like, I had no idea, like, that this was normal. And that's kind of where I stood too. Like, when I, you know, realized that this wasn't happening in every home across America, I was floored, because that was just how I've always lived my life from the time that I was so little. Like, it was just so normal to us. And, you know, it's not something that we, you know, flagged until we were introduced to a different lifestyle. So that's probably one of the more stand-outish memories that I have. And the only other one being was I had a girl meet me at an event that I did in Virginia. And she came up to me, and I thought what was her mother standing next to her. And she said, I just want you to know, I read your book. I thought it was great. And you've been a really big inspiration to me. And she said, I don't want to tell you, you know, I don't want to take up too much time, but I told on my mother's boyfriend recently, like a month ago. She's like, and, you know, I just want to let you know that you were part of the reason why I came forward. And I said, that's fantastic. Like, I'm so glad it was an inspiration to you. And I turned to the woman standing next to her, thinking it was her mother. And I said, and thank you so much for supporting her through this. And she goes, this is my foster mom. Her mother kicked her out of the house. She was 16 because she told her mother that the boyfriend was abusing her. So she lost her siblings, she lost her mother, she lost her home, and she was in foster care away from her other siblings because she stood up against this guy. And that just broke my heart, because I was like, wow, like, and that's a very real scenario for a lot of people who tell, especially when they're kids, is that they don't get believed, or they think that, you know, they're making it up. And, you know, not for nothing, but like, what kid wants to make that up about an adult? Like, what kid wants that stigma per se? You know, I know when I was in high school, it wasn't the cool thing to be known as, you know, the girl whose father did this to her. So, you know, that just broke my heart. That was probably one of the bigger, you know, stories that I remember.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's well, once again, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. And I'm looking forward to the rest of your career. And I know you have many more great books to put out there to the world. And so what's the next project? Do you have another project coming up?
I do. Right now, Spilled Milk is actually being adapted to a screenplay, which is fantastically exciting. So it's gained enough attention at this point that people are saying, you know, I think that a lot of people would like to see this as a movie. And I said, okay, let's do it.
All right. Yeah, that'd be awesome. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be awesome. So once again, thank you so much. And once again, website?
KLRandis.com.
All right.
Or at KL Randis on Twitter.
All right. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. All right. So now we're going to go to the part of the show that we're going to take the microphone and hand it over to Arpo for your discoveries.
Yeah, Josh, get on in here. Don't be shy. All right. Well, 2 weeks ago, I should say, the random pick from the Psychotronic Encyclopedia Film gave us Bloodbath, a movie that was actually filmed in New York. It was really an anthology of horror stories, all of which take place in New York, which was interesting. The thing that had me really excited about this movie was the fact that it is was directed by Joel M. Reed. And when I saw that name, in my mind, I'm going, Blood-Sucking Freaks! Oh my God, the guy that directed Blood-Sucking Freaks directed this movie. Is going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to find it. So I tried to find it. And I tried and tried. I tried using all of my favorite little pirate sites. And they had the movie on there, but for some reason, they had no seeds and no peers, and they wouldn't download. So I went to see if perhaps I could watch it as a rental on my Amazon Video subscription, on my Prime subscription, and I couldn't find it as a video, but I could find it as a DVD. But it was $22. I'm going, do I want to pay $22 for this? But I read the reviews on Amazon. There were two people who reviewed it. They both gave it 5-star reviews. Both talked about how great the movie was. I thought, well, this could be an addition to my Halloween lineup of films. So I ordered it. It came in the mail, and just out of curiosity, I read the entire entry in the Psychotronic Encyclopedia, and it mentioned the fact that this was a great movie to watch if you wanted to take a nap. Oh, joy. And yet here I was with the movie in my hand, and I said, well, I paid $22 for it. I'm watching this puppy. Harv Presnell, who played Wade Gustafson in Fargo, is the closest you could say to being the lead character in this. He plays a director who the rumor is he has married the daughter of Satan in return for success as a filmmaker. And that the only stipulation in the agreement was that he had to provide the daughter of Satan with a son. Well, to hear him talk at a dinner party, he's poo-pooing the whole idea. He doesn't even believe in the supernatural. And so what we get is people trying to convince him that the supernatural is real by telling him these strange supernatural stories. One involves a hitman who meticulously plans out his crimes down to the last detail, and unfortunately ends up falling into one of his own setups. He plants a bombed briefcase in a car, and as he's driving away, he runs out of gas. And some hippie dude comes pulling the car. Hey, man, you broke down. Let me give you some gas. So he gets in the car, and after a few minutes, he begins to realize that he is in the car that he planted the briefcase bomb in. So he quickly tells the guy, let me out, and he grabs his bag and he gets out, and he walks down the road, goes into a diner, and he's sitting there waiting for his food. Suddenly the hippie dude comes in and says, you left your briefcase in the car. Boom. Well, the director's going, well, there's nothing supernatural about that, so someone else tells a story about a guy who got a wishing coin to use on his shrew of a wife. And instead, he's been reading a romance novel about the Napoleonic Wars. And so he wishes himself into the Napoleonic Wars. Well, of course, the Napoleonic Wars, the soldiers were living in crap conditions. And the beautiful women were not all that beautiful. And he's now stuck in this thing. And when he does finally manage to get his coin back so he can wish himself back into the future, he gets his arm cut off, so only his arm returns. Ah! Then we have a story about a man who accidentally gets locked into a safe with a smart aleck ghost. And his wife, played by Doris Roberts. Whoa, Doris Roberts, wow. She's in the movie for almost a whole minute and a half. But boy, did they plug she was in this movie. But she eventually finds him in the vault. He hasn't died, but he ate all of his money in order to stay alive because he was in there for a month. Ah! So, these stories just go on into the night, and none of them are particularly gruesome. None of them are particularly scary. And it ends with the director realizing that his child has escaped, and he goes on the hunt for him and finally finds him in the bedroom of a young woman played by P.J. Souls, who we see virtually nothing of. I mean, I saw PJ Souls. I'm going, all right, yeah, Halloween. You see anything you like? Yeah, boy, did I ever then. Not this time. You barely saw her. Because when he finally gets in there, the guy is on top of her and in front of her. And, it's like, I'm literally twisting my head going, what? Where's PJ Souls? I want to see PJ Souls. No such luck. But she does scream. She does have a very pretty scream. So, was it a bit of a disappointment? Let's just say I had a really nice nap and leave it at that. I was disappointed. Joel M. Reed, he's not the world's greatest filmmaker, but he, like I said, he made Blood-Sucking Freaks, which I enjoyed immensely. And then he, I guess, into everybody's cinema life, some crap must fall. And so it did with this. So, we'll see if we can have a little bit better luck next week. I'm actually, rather than, where did it go? I have a film here that was actually recommended to me by somebody, so I'm going to check. Usually I don't take requests, but a friend of mine here suggested this because of Alan Rickman being in it. So next week, The Search for John Gissing. What's it about? I would tell you, but I'd only be guessing. So in the meanwhile, I'll turn things back over to the crazy caravan of comical geniality, Kente and gang.
Oh man, you sure can come up with some bad movies to watch. I mean, good movies to watch. Definitely another jewel of a film.
Oh yeah, an absolute gem. Oh dear man. God. Not going to be on the Halloween list.
You should definitely get tax credit for having to sit through some of these films. Oh boy.
Well, the only problem with that is then I'd have to actually declare some kind of income, and I ain't going to do that. Not that I'm going to get income from here. I didn't want to make everybody else know. Say, what, he gets paid for this? No, I don't.
Oh, you ain't getting your checks?
Oh, you mean the ones you didn't mail? No, I didn't get those.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Well, all right.
I'm still waiting on mine.
Well, I wanted to once again thank our guest for our first segment, Miss KL Randis, for stopping in. Make sure you go out and get her book.
I already have it.
Very powerful, moving stuff. Look at you. All right. So now let's get to round 3 of the Comic Book Madness Bracket Challenge. And joining us is the guy from Semicore Studios, the one and only Joshua. How you doing, Josh? I'm excellent. Okay. It looks like you got 2 I think these are 2 of your heroes behind you, Dexter as well as Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 people that I tried to model my life after. Well, one person.
Very, very scary. All right, so let's do this. We're going to start off by talking about matchups from round 2, and then we're going to talk about the matchups in round 3. Now, for those who may not know, we every year, normally we do this in March in honor of the March Madness brackets for NCAA basketball. And what we do is we have a theme each year. And the first year it was movie villains. And we have 64 characters that we'll put in brackets. And each week the fans get to vote for who they think is the
Am I the only one who's not hearing him anymore? It's like he slowed down and then just stopped.
I don't hear him now. I don't think it's recording.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's get to it. Round 2 put up the matchup of the number 1 seed Superman versus the number 9 seed Rogue. And with 63% of the vote, Superman defeats Rogue.
Damned heat vision.
This will set up a matchup of number 4 seed Green Arrow versus number 5 seed Cyclops. And the winner is, with 54% of the vote, Green Arrow.
Just because he has his own TV show. That's not. If Cyclops had a TV show, he'd have murdered him.
All right, so we have a matchup of Superman versus Green Arrow. And let's start off with Josh. Who do you got in that matchup? Green Arrow or Superman?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm probably not going to think about this in any logical way. So, out of sheer spite, I'm going with Green Arrow with a kryptonite arrow to the knee.
All right, Arpo, who do you got?
Yes,
Superman?
I was just going to say, if Green Arrow could keep getting his hands on those kryptonite arrows, then I'll put him over Superman. But on the off chance that he can't, I think this time I'll go with the winning team and say Superman.
All right, and what about you?
I'm gonna go. It's like Green Arrow and Kryptonite Arrow.
Okay, Green Arrow and a Kryptonite arrow.
Yep.
All right. Moving right along, and I'll take Superman because my boy is always getting hated on. So I gotta represent.
And do you ever wonder if there's a reason for that?
Because y'all racist against aliens.
Mr. Perfect Jaw, Mr. Perfect little curl in the middle of the forehead, Mr. Oh, look at me, I can fly. You know, in the original comics, he couldn't fly.
Yeah,
he could just jump very far. The reason he was able to start flying was because when Max Fleischmann was making the Superman cartoons, it got to be a little bit, monotonous having to keep showing him making these long leaps, and they just wrote the creators and said, look, can we just make him fly? And they said, yeah, you can make him fly in the cartoons, that's fine. And then it went to the comic book.
Yeah, there's a lot of situations like that where the TV show or changed the actual comic book. So yeah. All right, here we go. So the number 3 seed Mr. Fantastic went up against the number 6 seed Daredevil. And with 90% of the vote, Daredevil killed Mr. Fantastic. He wouldn't look so fantastic after that battle. All right, so this will be setting up the matchup of the winner between the number 2 seed Deadpool versus the number 7 seed Spawn. And with 81% of the vote, Deadpool defeats Spawn in the battle of crazy dead satanic characters. So we have a matchup of number 2 Deadpool versus number 6 Daredevil. So he's just going against the devil 2 weeks in a row. So I'm gonna start off with you, Arpo. Who do you got? You got Deadpool or do you have Daredevil?
Well, this is an interesting matchup. I mean, we've got Deadpool, who's basically a guy who can't die, who can always heal himself. But, he also never shuts up. And, that's going to make it very easy for Daredevil to home in on where he is and just keep beating the crap out of him for, okay, yeah, so he's never actually going to totally destroy him, but he's always going to be able to knock him down and beat the crap out of him. And, for that reason, I got to go with Daredevil.
Oh, wow, Daredevil. Okay. What about you, Olaf? You got Deadpool or Daredevil?
It's a tough one. It's like it'd be a good matchup. I think I'm gonna go with Daredevil also, because I think he can take him.
Okay, so you support the blind. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Josh? You have Deadpool or Daredevil?
This is a tough one. Let me just think about that for a second. Let's see. I'm gonna go Deadpool. Because he's not afraid to cut the guy's head off.
Now I'm gonna go for Deadpool as well. And just as a side note, recently it came out that they're actually considering once again adding the character of Deadpool to a future X-Men film. And we know what happened the last time they did it. It wasn't very, very well done. But of course, they've refined the character Daredevil, and with the same actor, by the way. And so I just wanted to get you guys' thoughts on the idea of a future X-Men movie that might actually have Deadpool in it. What do you guys think? You guys down with that?
If it's still going to be Ryan Reynolds, then yeah, I'm down with it. If they're going to keep the character like he was in the Deadpool movie, then I mean, the man has no sense of responsibility. So it's an interesting diaspora, or whatever you want to call it, between him and the X-Men, who are always trying to control their powers and control what they can do.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Josh?
I think it's possible that they carry over to an X-Men movie with Deadpool and do it well. But I think the only problem would be you would automatically have to tone him down to a PG-13 level.
Really? Why do you think so?
Because I don't see an X-Men movie outside of a Wolverine being anything harder than a PG-13. That's a license that they just want to pour butts in the seats. Men, women, children, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay. Well, the next Wolverine movie is supposed to be a rated R one.
Right, and the character does call for it at times, which is why I think they're going to keep the characters that need an R rating separate from the mainstream X-Men movies.
I love how they act like Deadpool is like the first R-rated comic book movie. No, remember Blade?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but for an entirely different reason. I mean, Blade, they must have gone through about 150 gallons of blood. That's just for the one scene in the nightclub. I mean,
yeah,
that's my kind of nightclub. What about you, Olaf? You want to see Deadpool with the X-Men?
I think it would be an interesting ad to bring him in, but I kind of have to agree with Josh. They kind of have to tone him down just a little bit because Deadpool doesn't really consider much what he says or does, and the X-Men are a little bit more not quite as boisterous,
family friendly.
Yeah, they're a little more family friendly, and I just think that Deadpool, they'd have to rein him in a little bit, but he could be he could be a good addition to the I think to the Avengers, or X-Men, but they just have to tone him down quite a bit.
Yeah, but I don't know if we want a watered down Deadpool, right?
As long as it's not on National Women's Day.
National Women's Day, hilarious. All right. Let's move on to the Spider-Man bracket. We had the number 1 seed Spider-Man versus the number 8 seed Iceman. which, you know, I don't like that name, Iceman. But you know, what was that game? Mega Man. Remember they had that character Iceman, and that's what I actually think of. But I'm a weirdo though. But with 72% of the vote, Spider-Man defeats Iceman. So I know that was really surprising. Setting up a matchup between the number 5 seed Doctor Strange versus the number 13 seed Ghost Rider. With 91% of the vote, Doctor Strange kills off Ghost Rider. So now we have a matchup of Spider-Man versus Doctor Strange. So, Olaf, who do you got? You got the little kid from Queens, or do you have, Doctor Strange?
I think I'd go. I think I'm gonna go with Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, yeah.
I think I'm gonna go Spider-Man.
What about you, Josh? Josh?
I will go with the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Spiderman. All right. And what about you, Arpo?
Well, and first of all, you were kind of like reaching, like you couldn't think where Doctor Strange was from. He lives in Greenwich, just for the record.
Yeah.
And this is hard because Spider-Man and Doctor Strange are actually very good friends. It depends on where the battle's going to take place, because if it takes place in an astral realm, Spider-Man is lost without Doctor Strange. But in the real world, I think Spider-Man, if he had to, would kick his butt. So I'll go with Spider-Man.
All right. And, you know, for those who may not have seen Captain America Civil War, one of the best things about that movie was Spider-Man. I mean, I really, really enjoyed Spider-Man. And I didn't know how I was going to like him in this world, just because we've seen him, you know, twice before. I'm not counting before that. But I really, really, really thought that Spider-Man was great. It was a great addition. The Russo brothers are really good. You know, Winter Soldier was outstanding. Civil War was on the money as well. And the way that they used Spider-Man in this film, I thought was outstanding. And also, too, I really liked how, that scene where Tony Stark went to recruit him, in Queens. I thought that was so funny. It was really funny, and I thought it really gave the right vibe for Spider-Man that we really hadn't seen.
No, it's because Marvel finally got Sony to give him back, and now they're doing him right. And by the way, the other really great thing about Captain America Civil War was seeing the preview for Doctor Strange in 3D. Totally warped my mind. I mean, I'd seen the preview in 2D, and it was like, oh, this looks neat. Then seeing it in 3D was like, whoa! Drop acid before you come, man.
Then we did find out that Black Panther is a total badass.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I'm going to talk about Black Panther when we get to him on this bracket. But spoiler alert, he was. Well, I'll get to what I felt about Black Panther, but you can kind of tell by the smile I have on my face what I felt about how they did the character.
You didn't like him very much,
but okay.
You can tell he just hated him.
I hated it.
I can tell by the look on your face you did not like Black Panther. I could tell.
He's going, man, they should have had a white guy play him.
All right. Oh God! I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. All right, so here we go. Number 6 seed, The Flash, versus number 14 seed, Jean Grey, and with 54% of the vote, Mr. Quickie defeats
at least
Jean Grey. So, and that sets up a matchup of the number 2 seed, Wolverine, versus the number 7 seed, Ant-Man, and with 91% of the vote, Ant-Man is defeated by the Wolverine. Not surprising. Who voted for Ant-Man over Wolverine? Really though? I mean, I like Ant-Man, but dang.
I did. It's like I did. Just like Ant-Man's going to get him.
All right, so we have now a matchup of number 2 seed Wolverine versus number 6 seed The Flash. So, Arpo, who do you have in this matchup?
It would be a fun matchup. Yeah, it would be a fun matchup just to see visually. But bottom line, I don't care how fast the Flash can run. When he runs into those adamantium blades, bye-bye Flash. It'll be slice and dice time. Wolverine.
Agreed, yes. All right, what about you, Olaf?
Like slice and dice. It's Wolverine it's like Wolverine to take him.
Okay. And what about you,
I'm
Josh?
really torn on this. Because on the one hand, you have Flash, fast as light, can circle them and pound them to a pulp. But that really doesn't matter because Wolverine's healing factor will always keep him in the fight. So I might just have to go with Wolverine to stamina alone.
I got Wolverine in this matchup. When I was coming up, I wasn't a comic book reader, right? But people who didn't even read comic books had love for Wolverine. You know what I'm saying? He was like the cool comic book character that people like, even people who didn't really know a lot about him because he looked cool. He had the look, and he had the character had the swag that people just really gravitated to. So I remember when the X-Men movie came out, and the first thought was when they saw some guy named Hugh Jackman was playing Wolverine, was like, oh, remember, people hated on him at first. You know what I mean? Like, he was people thought they had messed up, and who is this guy, and all of this. And now I would say that he's beloved now as Wolverine. Wouldn't you guys agree?
I would say, yeah, he's very accepted as Wolverine. But yeah, at first it was kind of like, this guy does musicals. Wolverine doesn't do musicals.
Yeah. What about you, Josh? Have you finally accepted him as Wolverine?
We never had a problem with Wolverine to begin with. He's a little bit taller than I'd wanted, and a little bit more unknown than we would think of. When we're in school, we cast who our favorite heroes would be if they would ever make a movie, that kind of thing. But you're right. I cannot imagine anybody else playing Logan at this point because he's done it 56 times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know, right? Right. Olaf, I bet you Olaf has something to say. I think Olaf would like his hand at playing Wolverine.
I could do Wolverine.
Yeah, I can see it. So yeah, big shout out. I think I don't know if he's in Apocalypse.
I don't know. I don't know if it's Hugh Jackman or not, but Wolverine is in Apocalypse because at the very end of the preview, somebody comes in and says, wow, what happened here? And they said, we had some help. And you see the claws pop out in the foreground, but we don't see who's playing him.
See, I got my claw. I got my blades. I'm ready.
Yeah. I think Wolverine. I think he said Wolverine 3 is going to be his last one.
Yeah, I think that's what they always say until that dump truck full of money shows up at their doorstep.
Yeah, there wasn't going to be an Iron Man 4, but now there is.
That's true. So maybe he's gonna make a Wolverine 18 at some point. Whenever he needs to buy something, maybe
we're gonna do it right now. Okay, yeah, let's keep going.
Well, maybe they should keep going until they get one of those movies right.
I thought the first Wolverine movie was not bad.
I guess.
Yeah,
the first one.
I didn't say it was good. I just said it was not bad. I mean, the second one was bad. It was 50 Shades of bad. Okay.
It was like a romantic, some kind of romantic, whatever, in the Far East crap. I was like, what the hell is this? This doesn't feel like this doesn't feel right. So, All right, so here we go. We're on the Batman bracket. We have the number 1 seed, Batman, versus number 8 seed, Storm, with 81% of the vote. Surprise, surprise, Batman wins. Setting up a matchup of the number 4 seed, Iron Man, versus number 5 seed, Thor. And with 63% of the vote, Thor was defeated. So this sets up the battle of the 1%ers. Number 1 seed, Batman, versus number 4 seed, Iron Man. So I'm going to start off with Josh. Which one of these rich pricks are you going to
I'm going to go for the one that will win, Batman. Simple as that.
Okay. All right, Arpo, which one of these 1%ers you got?
I have to go with the one who has the best toys. And by far the one who has the best toys is Tony Stark, Iron Man. And Olaf, who's your friend?
Really? Okay.
Very, very lovable looking.
That's my little dragon buddy.
Ah.
All right. So which one of these rich pricks you got? Iron Man or Batman?
I agree with Harpo. And there's the one who's got the best. The one who's the one who's got the best toys is usually the one that wins. And Stark definitely has the better toys.
Mm-hmm. All right, now let me ask you guys, who
Stark.
Do you think has more money?
Stark, definitely.
I have no idea. I'll guess Batman. Why not?
It seems like Stark has more money.
And I think Batman has the better toys, by the way. He has a gadget for everything.
I think he has darker toys. I wouldn't be surprised if he has, some red curtain type
Where's
toys.
Iron Man's shark repellent, huh?
We don't know about.
That is one of the great classic moments of the Adam West Batman movie, was the bat shark repellent.
Shark repellent, yes.
What about the scene that what's his face did for Dark Knight Rises? Took that classic Adam West moment from the '66 movie and put it in Dark Knight Rises. The some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. All right, so we have the number 3 seed, Captain America, versus number 6 seed, Silver Surfer, with 63% of the vote. Captain America moves on to face the winner of the number 2 seed, Professor X, versus number 10 seed, Nick Fury. And with 54% of the vote, it was very narrow. Professor X was defeated by Nick Fury. So now we have a matchup of Captain America versus his boss, Nick Fury. So I'm going to start off with Olaf. Who do you got? Do you have Chris Evans or do you have Samuel Jackson?
It's like, well, I don't know. Both tough. I think I want to kind of lean a little bit towards Fury. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Nick.
Okay, Nick Fury. All right. And what about you?
Well, first of all, let me ask this. Raise your hand if you've never wanted to kill your boss. That's what I thought. So I don't think the fact that Nick Fury is Captain America's boss is going to enter into the argument at all. And quite frankly, I think it is a hard one. I will give it that. I'm going to give Captain America the edge. I just wish. Well, I don't want to give away a spoiler from the end of the Civil War movie. So I'll just say, I wish Cap hadn't done something at the end of that movie. So, but no, I'll go with Captain America.
All right. What about you, Josh?
I have to give the advantage to the guy with the shield and the superior physical prowess. So Captain America.
I don't know. Nick Fury might have him beat in that regard. All right. I have Captain America as well. All right, so let's move on to the Hulk bracket and our final bracket. We have the number 1 seed, Incredible Hulk, versus number 8 seed, War Machine. And very surprisingly, with 91% of the vote, the Hulk was victorious versus War Machine. So War Machine, once again, if you've seen Captain America Civil War, loses again. And this sets up the battle between the number 4 seed, Black Widow, and the number 5 seed, Black Panther. And with 72% of the vote, Black wins. Black Panther, that is. So now we have a matchup of the Hulk versus Black Panther. Hell of a matchup. And I am going to start off with our poll. Who do you have? Black Panther?
Well, first of all, I'd like to take back something I said earlier. Obviously, Olaf has best toys. Apart from that, this is a really interesting matchup. I mean, Hulk smash, Hulk bash, smoke crash, but Black Panther's got that adamantium suit, or the vibranium suit, the vibranium claws, which are virtually indestructible, and poor Hulk, he got no vibranium at all. So I really think with his speed and his agility and his ability to take a pounding, I think Black Panther can pull it off.
Okay. All right. What about you, Captain Olaf Barbosa?
I think, I mean, the Hulk, like I say, he takes a licking and keeps on ticking, but I think the Black Panther's could take him. I think he could finally. Black Panther.
What about you?
To enough to where that he could actually win the fight. I think.
Okay. What about you, Josh?
I'm not sure why all of this this love for the Black is going one way, and that's Hulk smash. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, say that one more time, Josh. You kind of cut out. Yeah, now we can hear you.
Sorry, say that one more time, Josh. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, Hulk.
Yeah. All right, Hulk. Okay, now just to let to kind of go back over the same material. Once again, I recently saw Captain America: Civil War, and one of the you're a fool. One of my favorite parts of the movie was, of course, Spider-Man, as I said earlier, but Black Panther. They did an amazing job of bringing him to the screen finally, and I thought Chadwick Boseman was outstanding. And it was very refreshing.
Yeah, and the thing that was amazing to me is they gave the Black Panther so much screen time in this movie, and it still left me wanting more.
Yes, I was kind of wondering like how that was going to work, being that they haven't done him yet. Like, because how are they gonna deal with his origins and all of that stuff? And I thought they did a good job of working it in there where it wasn't too much, but it gave you enough to where it felt right. So I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah, I thought they did a good job. So yeah, it was really good. So I still kind of hear an echo a little bit. Arpo. So we have the number 3 seed, Luke Cage, versus the number 6 seed, Raphael from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And with 72% of the vote, Luke Cage pound the hell out of Raphael, made turtle soup. And then, so that's going to be the winner of that matchup will go against the winner of this matchup, number 2 seed Punisher versus number 10 seed, Arpo's favorite comic book character of all time, Aquaman, number 10 seed. And with 72% of the vote, Aquaman loses to the Punisher. So we have a matchup of Luke Cage, number 3 seed, versus number 2 seed Punisher. All right. So we're going to start off with Joshua. I know Josh is in mourning because his Aquaman was defeated. So who do you have? Punisher? Punisher or Luke Cage? Will Luke Cage get revenge for your Aquaman's defeat?
I always should stop saying that. Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Luke Cage. Punisher likes to shoot people and stab people, but for a guy that can't be shot or stabbed, it'd be really difficult to take him down. So
Luke Cage.
And
so Olaf, who do you got? You got Luke Cage or you got Punisher? I see a kinship with you in the Punisher. Mm. Punisher likes guns. Olaf likes guns. Punisher likes to punish.
Yeah, I was going to say Punisher because
I've never seen them in the same place at the same time.
Mm. Yeah, I was going to say Punisher. I think just because I just think Punisher just whoop him. That's it. He going to give him. He just going to punish him until he's just done.
Member over there. And Arpo, who do you have? You have Punisher or you have Luke Cage?
Turn myself back on again and say, this is a really, really tough one, but let's be honest. I mean, yes, Punisher has the firepower, but Luke Cage, I mean, he can survive explosions. Never mind guns and knives. He can survive explosions. So it's going to have to come down to an up-close, face-to-face battle, and in that, I got to pick Luke Cage every time.
Yes, I take Luke Cage as well. So, and voting, that concludes our matchups. You can go to Indie Radio, indyradio.org/comic book hero round 3. And that's where you can do your voting. Voting is all the way up until an hour before the show next week at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern is when the voting concludes. So definitely, your characters need your votes. So that concludes another round of Comic Book Madness. I'm going to start off with you, Josh. Tell people how they can get some Semicore.
Well, you can find everything that I do at semicorestudios.com. You can follow me on Twitter at semicorejosh. You can go to Facebook, facebook.com/semicorestudios. Give it a like, leave a comment, let us know what you think about all the content we put up. And that's pretty much it. Although Monday, Kente, if you're interested, we did our full review of Captain America Civil War. Give that a listen. It's about an hour long.
Yes. I actually, while I was painting, I listened to it. So, I keep in the know. All right, Arpo, how can people get you on social media and all of that stuff? Oh, is Arpo? Looks like he's.
They can get me.
So we're gonna kick him out, and Arpo just popped back in.
I'm frozen.
And we're gonna go to you, Olaf. How can people get you in social media and such?
Well, you can stalk me on both Facebook and Twitter at Olaf Barbosa, but just don't stalk too close because I do get nervous and I do have an itchy trigger finger.
There we go. All right. And Arpo, how can people get you on social media and such?
Am I moving now? Okay. You can reach me Facebook, Richard Pochard. You can reach me on TM Underground, Art Pochard, or through Skype, Rich Posh Productions.
All right. And you can get me at Kente F. And make sure you guys vote. And we'll see you next time right here